from Native.
What's up? What's up?
Hey, Jihad.
It has been a while, my friend. Apparently, we only talk. Well, we first talk when the green candles start. It's not like we only talk when the green candles start,
Yes.
but excited to
Yes,
be
yes,
back to you.
yes.
So, you're the
Heads
founder
down.
of Native Studio, a narrative-focused design studio crafting intentional stories and ideas that power Web3 builders. And you've recently launched a platform, a tool. I'm not sure exactly how to frame it for technologists. It's called Signal for technologists who want to shape a better world, not just amplify its capabilities. So, uh, yeah, eager to get into that dynamic between sort of maybe the ethical and idealistic world that we can live in, and maybe some of the realities of building in tech in 2025. But maybe should we just start at the top? Give us the intention behind Native and introduce Native Signal to us.
For sure. So yeah, Native is a narrative studio. We work in two ways. The first is on one hand with companies hands-on, carving their point of view, figuring out what it is, what the future that they believe in is, and then helping them take that to market, whether that's through product marketing, whether it's through an investor pitch, whatever stakeholder we need to talk to, we will talk to in order to make sure that we get those believers. On the other side of things, though, I'm particularly interested in shaping ideas that I feel are important, and then finding the founders who, might not think that they align with that particular narrative until it is articulated, right? So Daryl just mentioned VCs trying to all invest in the stablecoin narrative. From my perspective, it is like stablecoins are great, but like, what does that actually mean, right? Like, what do stablecoins enable? What future are we trying to unlock that this technology could help us get to? Let's get as specific about that as possible, and then let's double down both from a company strategy perspective, but then also a network and community perspective, and rally the troops. So yeah, Native started from a consulting perspective, but Signal today is really trying to rally the troops around the narratives that we believe in. And the thing from a crypto perspective that I'm particularly interested right now is this idea of stablecoins and open financial rails unlocking entrepreneurial abundance. So I believe there will be, 100x more companies of all shapes and sizes started over the next few years, both as a result of AI tools and as a result of crypto. What are those things going to look like? Who globally is going to be able to come to market as a result of that? And that's just like one of these ideas that this community of Signal is starting to discuss, bring in founders and community members that are able to push the boundaries there, and then hopefully spread that narrative so that more companies that are building the infrastructure to empower that will align with that.
I'm curious. I just want to ask, maybe it's a jump a little bit, but I'm so curious what you think about the founder as influencer narrative, and what do you make of Roy Lee and Cluely?
Oh man, founder as influencer, I think thumbs up, right? I don't think that that's inherently bad, and I would argue that if a founder is doing their job, they need to be out in the world telling their story, pushing forward their worldview, all of those good things. There are two stipulations to that, though, in my mind. A, you should be capital G good, and obviously that is subjective, but I think it is open to debate in the public forum as to whether or not something is good for society or bad for society, and you as a founder should be able to back that up and make your case, right? And then second of all, I think there's an argument to be made that like you should be engaging people in a way that is actually like making their life better. And in the Cluely case, not just saying like, hey, cheating is good, we're going to normalize this, and we're going to push this forward. One could argue that the actually technology behind Cluely and the product itself is actually very positive, and it's just the marketing that is, in my opinion, a bit morally bankrupt. And I think from my perspective, that is a flaw in the company building, right? Like if you're building a great product and your marketing seems, off-putting, morally wrong, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're actually building great tech.
Do you think it's possible for founders like that to shift the narrative, starting with something sensational perhaps, and then moving to something more ethically aligned with the larger user base, say enterprise customers who may not have a taste for the cheating narrative in the example of Cluely?
I think yes, and I think I hope that is the case. I also think that, we don't have to play the games at the beginning in order to reach that end, right? There's a difference between I forget the word that you just used, but there's a difference between like, building this hype in a negative way versus just building the hype period. I have absolutely no problem with a founder going out and hiring hundreds of TikTok interns to, you know, make clips and push the narrative and do so in a way that is a you know, a bit more out of pocket. I just think we should be careful what we're putting out into the world.
Yeah, it seems like there's a tension though in this kind of influencer-driven founder marketing where
For sure.
what works on social media is the sensational stuff, giving away money, bragging about people, drama, this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that tension is always going to exist. At the end of the day, like just because something works doesn't mean that you should do it. And I think there's a tendency in tech to stray away from like the moralization of actions, both in, you know, our engagement with people, but then also in like what it is that we are building. Not to say that people are scared of it, but I think people just think it's taboo, right? Like because it is subjective, because it is not black and white in code and math, like it is something that we should stay away from. And from my perspective, it's like, no, that we each have an individual responsibility to do good, right? Whatever that means to us. And at the very least, we should introspect as far as like, what does that mean to us? And then we should act accordingly. And I don't think we should, you know, give ourselves a pass just because something is legal or has become socially acceptable. And in this case, I feel like it's one of those situations.
I mean, I think this is that really interesting discussion. I recently had an interview that we'll be sharing probably next month with Sari Azut, who, you know, it's again, I think taking a very, she's building, I think Sublime is the product, and
Yes.
taking a maybe slow tech, intentional tech approach to it. And I think, you know, there is this truth, I think, in that they're, you know, building even a very big business or a valuable business, especially in crypto, might not require having a gazillion people using your product, and finding like those core believers, it becomes the real thing. And also anybody who's created media, who showed up on the internet, especially even X these days, is very aware of when something hits and gets distributed and when doesn't. And I think you can make an argument that, you know, the thing that we're really fighting against as either advocates of new ideas or new products is irrelevancy. And we are swimming in a sea of irrelevant potential here every single day. And so I think like a part of the conversation around sort of intentional tech that kind of just leaves me wanting a lot more is it seems like there is some degree of ignoring how just hard it is to actually stand out and to get that early reach. And I think it's why we see Clearly being sort of held up in a large way, not because, well, because it's out there, it's crazy, and also it works. And so I'm curious, like, how can we actually balance those things out? Like, are we able to, like, do we have the privilege of being able to do that? Ooh, did I use that word? That's a loaded term.
Yeah. I think to use your term, like it works, but by, you know, what definition or what metric, right? So to use Sari as an example, I admire the product that she's building and the way that she's gone about building that company, in that they have been, you know, slowly and steadily, you know, building DAU over like month over month, year over year. She's had a newsletter even before she built that product that aligns with the thesis of the company, and as a result has been able to build this like very loyal audience and set of believers. And I forget exactly what the numbers are, but if you look at the revenue numbers that she just published a few weeks ago on Twitter, like, or maybe it was just like the number of like paid subscribers that she has, it's not like astronomical, but it's a very solid, sustainable business. And in my mind, it's, to go back to this term, like what works and what does not work and by what metric. If you're building a solid, sustainable, profitable business, many of us would argue that that is okay, that is good enough, and that is still doing good for the world. I think the flip side of this is like, there are tons of AI startups that are popping up today that have a lot of hype for 3-4 months because they're state of the art, but also because like there's some new unlock that they provide, and then people just pivot to the next thing, right? That because it's better, because it provides some other unlock. And that's only going to continue to happen faster and faster. I think those timelines are going to get much shorter, and therefore some might look to the Sari model of building a company and say, hey, this slow and steady wins the race thing might actually be the way to go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to hear this and maybe think, I don't know if I want to do an intentional tech company. I want to do a unicorn. So I'm curious. It seems to me that there's another side of this coin, which is that people, I mean, entities like Satoshi, cypherpunks, people who are really driven by their version of the good are actually some of the most powerful actors in the space. You can also think of cliches like the Think Different campaign from Apple and Steve Jobs. So I'm wondering, is there an ambitious version of intentionality in tech that you advocate in conversations with founders these days?
Yeah, like an example I always look to is I don't think Replit is, being unintentional in the way that they're building their company, but at the same time, like Amjad from the beginning has had a very like specific goal of I want to teach millions of people around the world how to code and how to build product, right? And it started off as more of an education platform, and now it's become more of a code gen platform. But he's still like reaching that goal of millions of people being able to build product that weren't able to do so before. They have like $100 million in ARR or something crazy at this point. Like that is, in my mind, a very successful venture bet. And intentional in a different light, I wouldn't argue that they were going slow and steady, but they're certainly very mission driven and aren't taking these more sensationalist approaches to their marketing and their outreach. So I don't think you have to sacrifice ambition to have a level of intentionality, but I do think at the speed at which you are working makes it more difficult to be intentional, and therefore makes it all the more important to ground yourself in some sort of mission and set of values as you're building.
I like that. Okay, so you are talking to founders often, and I'm assuming part of your job is really trying to understand their point of view as fast as possible. I'm curious if you could share some of your favorite questions that kind of get to the core of what a founder is building.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the big scary AGI questions that I think everybody is asking at this point, I think there's in crypto, the big question is always, do I have to lean into speculation, and is this something that I need to consider? And you guys have had this conversation plenty of times on this show alone. And I think, again, from this perspective, it's a question of intentionality. Like when you look to the base team, I think they are accelerating tokenization on posts in the app. Every single post is a coin now. But they're doing so in a way where it's like, this is the thesis that we were trying to push forward. These are the set of experiments that are pushing this forward. Let's see what the result is, right? It's not just throwing technology at a wall and seeing what sticks. And I can respect that, even if I don't necessarily agree with the execution. I think on the AI side of things, the big question people are asking is about memory. Like, am I supposed to be keeping all of the information that folks are running through my platform private and locked in? If I don't fundamentally believe in that, how do I actually build a moat around my product if people are switching from product to product, month over month, week over week? And that's another question that you have to ask yourself that I think, from my perspective, narrative is an answer to. It's a way that you can build long-term loyalty and belief in a product and in the brand without necessarily having to, lock users in technically. So plenty of questions, I think, across those verticals and more. And I don't think they're necessarily unique, but I think the way that we're going about answering questions is much from a perspective of like, what is the worldview that we're trying to push forward, and how can we like accrue a set of believers around this worldview so that they're going to stick with you through the ups and downs as you're building something for them.
Awesome, Jihad. I'm going to leave it there, my man. Thanks for hopping on, and best of luck in your endeavors.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Cheers.